Okay, so for my presentation, I'm going to focus on the media analysis that I did for Coco. So, Coco discusses the importance of culture within a family and within an individual. So I'm really going to be focusing more on like the family aspect of the film, but there were other traditions that I feel were worth mentioning that were very accurate to Mexican culture. And I think, overall Latinx community culture. One is music. The genres involved were mariachi, banda, ranchera. Many of these originated in Mexico, and they're very important to the culture of Mexico and the self-identity for Mexicans. I think one of the most obvious ones is El Grito. That's usually in, banda and ranchera music. And it's even in the film whenever Miguel's ancestor, teaches him how to find his voice. Another tradition, very important, that basically encompasses the whole film is the Day of the Dead. This is essential to the connection to your family. It's the most important time to have that connection with your family who is no longer with you, who is now in the spiritual realm. I thought it was very creative of the directors and the people who made the film to use skeletons as the character, because skeletons are a very important symbol during this time. It also did very well on representing the altars, how they display the photos, how they display the food and the drinks for their ancestors, and the flowers around the streets and around the altars to help guide the families, which brings me to my next point, family. How there's no such thing as an extended family. There's only immediate, where everybody's involved. It's a large unit. If you're part of a Mexican household, you know that your mom, your dad, your tío, your tía, grandpa, grandma, everybody holds the same authority over you. And that there's a very high amount of respect the higher you are in the generation. Also pride. Miguel was never ashamed of who he was and his background, even though some of his family members were. This is so important to the Mexican culture. Having pride and love in your own identity is so essential, I think, at least. And it's shown through music, tradition, language, and everything else. So the 4 psychological theories and concepts from the class that I want to relate to the media source are the family dynamic and how it involves in development. So the availability of siblings, grandparents, and other family members can provide economic, emotional, and informational support as a source of strength towards a child and adolescent's development. So some parenting behaviors I found in the textbook must be defined within specific cultural context and may have differential effects on children's functioning across ethnic groups. So to understand these behaviors, it is necessary to consider Latino cultural values. Some of these are common to all Latino groups, and others vary by nationality. What I want to focus on is, the literature highlights 3 values that are important to understanding the parenting and family dynamic, which is, I don't know if I'm saying it right, familism, which is a set of beliefs that emphasize the importance of solidarity, obligation, and belief, basically, that the family and parenting are the authority and are important to development. Respeto, which is, a concept that emphasizes proper demeanor and respect for authorities and elders. Educación, which is a set of beliefs and practices that emphasize moral upbringing and being a good person. Another thing is resilience. So how family ties into that. There are indications that very aspects of familism and other culturally rooted beliefs and attitudes that can serve as either risk or protective functions, depending on the behavior that is being examined. So familism has been credited with contributing to Puerto Rican youth's resilience in avoiding substance abuse, and research suggests that most Latino youth consider upsetting their parents to be a substantial risk involved in like smoking of marijuana. So I believe that, you know, family plays a role in the way that most Latinx youth would want to stay away from problematic experiences because they have that respect for their family. So I also feel that family responsibilities have to do with identity, which is my third theory. You know, scholars from multiple perspectives have raised concerns about potential harmful consequences of family responsibilities on children's development. Family obligations may limit Latino youth's access to programs and services. So, for example, from the textbook, many Latino adolescents drop out of school in order to work and help support their families. And while we acknowledge these concerns, you know, recent research with Latino youth, predominantly of Mexican descent, indicates that Latino children's contributions to the maintenance and well-being of their families may promote competence, maturity, practically when they feel their efforts are valued, acknowledged, and reciprocated by parents or other family members. So you can say that, you know, it does have a negative effect on them, these family responsibilities, but recent research does show that these responsibilities actually makes them better in the long run. And it also, what I thought was interesting, that and it you know, it gives that sense of self, which is what I was trying to say. But what I thought was interesting is that there's a difference between ethnic identification and ethnic identity. So ethnic identity is reserved to the broader psychological process associated with the psychological and social meaning invested in these ethnic identifications, when ethnic identifications is more personal. Which leads me to my article that I chose, which we read actually for one of our RLs, which was called America's Shifting Color Line. I think this article was the one that spoke out to me the most, because it talked about how all of these people who identify as Latinx or Hispanic, they don't find that representation when they're asked about their race. So I feel like most people, when asked about, oh, what race are you, or when you even have to fill out like the census, for example, you don't know what to put, and a lot of these individuals, they don't know how to identify themselves. I thought it was interesting that the article does mention that sometimes people identify by the people that they're surrounded by, even if they aren't that. So I don't think there's enough representation for the Hispanic and Latinx community. I personally don't identify as white. I don't identify as black. I always put Mexican American or Mexican because that's just how I feel I should represent myself, you know. But I thought that was very interesting, you know, that the article discussed the vast growth in the Latinx population, yet they don't know how to identify themselves because we don't have our own race, which is very interesting considering that we're the fastest growing population. And by, you know, almost every article that we read this semester says that by 2050 or 2030, we'll, you know, basically United States will be either Latinx or mixed race, which I thought was very interesting, and yet we don't have any representation when it comes to race. You know, this all taught me that identity is so important, but how you perceive that identity, or better yet, how you come to the conclusion of identity, is what really is interesting. There are so many factors that play into a person's identity. And through this film, through this assignment, and through this class, I came to realize that family is a huge part of who you, what makes you, basically. And I had all this information, and I think I went overboard thinking that, oh, I'm not gonna be able to fill it up in 10 minutes, you know? But it is really interesting how, if you dig deep into like a film as simple as Coco that's meant for children, you can really see how much family, traditions, music, culture plays in your identity as a Latinx or Hispanic individual.